Spring has finally come. We've waited a long time for it to show up in Snowdon, where we're 2,000 feet above sea level. But it finally has come, and you can see the blossoms that are on the trees. And I love blossoms because it really gets me thinking as I watch and wait for them that something looked so dead just weeks ago. There couldn't possibly be any life in that branch. And yet now we see life, and there's hope. As we look at those blossoms, we can see hope for fruit and a harvest that is to come. And it got me thinking about our class and the prosthetic limbs. And it also got me thinking about how God works in us. So, do you remember the prosthetic limb that we're building? I had you guys study Easton LaChapelle, and we watched some videos about his prosthetic limb that he was making for little Momo, the girl that lost her limb. When you actually look into what Easton LaChapelle has been doing lately, it's very fascinating. Easton LaChapelle has been designing a special limb for a man who lost his limb in a combine accident. And it's very interesting because he's basically making it so that when the man thinks about what he wants his prosthetic limb to do, his prosthetic limb is responding to the man's actual thoughts. So basically he's got sensors in there being able to respond to the nerves, the signals that are coming from his brain. As he thinks about, I want to pick this up, the signal is going through and giving the hand that command, and the hand is responding. And that made me think a lot about this fruit tree behind me, and about spring, and about God. See, the fruit tree has been literally looking dead for the entire winter. And then now its blossoms are coming. Something inside of that tree has signaled for it to begin making blossoms. And those blossoms, as beautiful as they are only there for one purpose, really, and that is to make a plum. The bees will come and fertilize the fruit, and pretty soon we will have fruit, and we will be able to pick that fruit and enjoy a yummy plum tart that my mom makes. And what is the tree for? Well, the plum tree is actually for the fruit. That's what God designed it to do, is to produce fruit. And it can produce that fruit not for itself necessarily, but for others to enjoy. Yeah, I could plant a plum pit and get a tree, but God created that tree to give us fruit, to give the animals fruit, to give us food, to meet our need. And it started making me think about our God. It says in John 15, 1-5, this is Jesus talking, and it says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit he prunes so that it will be even more fruitful. You are already clean because of the word I have spoken to you. Remain in me as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me, and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. But it's the same thing with this fruit tree. If that which is inside of that tree was not healthy, the tree would not be able to produce the fruit that it's going to produce. Jesus says he's the true vine, and his Father is the gardener, and that we are the branches. And if you think about that, it's interesting to think how God himself is putting us into situations, helping cultivate us so that that which is inside can produce fruit. And what is inside of us that can produce fruit is Jesus Christ, if we know Jesus. So we were created by God to produce fruit, and that fruit is a fruit that is a spiritual fruit. The Bible talks, and a lot of you have memorized the verse that says, for the fruits of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And you've probably all memorized that verse. Those are examples of some of the fruits that God puts in us. The interesting thing to think about, though, is just as this tree behind me could not produce the blossoms that you see on it and eventually the fruit without its sustenance inside, that's how Jesus is to us. He is the one who gives us what we need. and we need to remain in Him. If I was to take a branch and cut it off of this tree right now and take it inside, those blossoms would never turn into fruit. I could put it in a glass of water and try to keep it healthy, but it would not be able to produce a plum. It has to stay on the tree in order for that plum to be produced. So I need to remain in God. I need to remain in Jesus. The way I remain in Jesus is by reading His Word and praying and staying in a relationship with Him, because it's Him that works in me. And in Colossians 1:27 it says, "To them God has chosen to make known among the Gentiles the glorious riches of this mystery, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory." Christ in us and working through us to give us the capability to have fruit. That is a mystery. It's an amazing mystery to think of our God in us, being able to communicate through us and help us to be able to live the way that He desires us to live. And if you think about the prosthetics, that's the same way with the prosthetic limb that Eastern La Chapelle is making. This prosthetic limb is going to work by getting the information that the man thinks in his mind out to that limb. And if there's anything in the way, it won't work. If the sensor breaks down, it won't work. There's a young lady named Joni Eareckson Tada, and she had a very dark experience that happened to her. She actually was out when she was a teenager, and she was jumping into a lake, and when she jumped in, she hit the bottom of the lake, and it paralyzed her. It's a very dark day, but the interesting thing is, if you ever get to watch her story, it didn't stop her from living for God. Even through the darkest experiences, Joni Eareckson Tada produces fruit to this day. She has an amazing ministry to those who are paralyzed, making wheelchairs for people who could never afford them in countries where they could never even dream of having a wheelchair. Why is she able to still be fruitful? Why is she able to still continue to have an impact on her world? Is because Jesus Christ courses through her soul and gives her the power of the Holy Spirit. It's Christ in her, the hope of glory. That's what gives her the power to be the kind of person that God has called her to be. John 1:19 says, Jesus said to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, the Son can do nothing of his own accord, but only what he sees the Father doing. Whatever the Father does, the Son does too." And I want you to just think about that. I mean, Jesus was here to live according to whatever his Father told him to do, which meant that he had to be connected to God at all times. Just like that prosthetic limb will only work as long as it's connected to that man's brain and being able to hear or being able to sense what it is that the man wants it to do. That's the way we need to be. We need to be connected to God like that.